All right, well, good morning, everyone. I am here. I'm Craig Williams. I'm the principal at Afterschool Elementary in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but I'm part of this group as the chairman of the advisory board for the Wyoming After School Alliance. I was actually a founding member of the Alliance. I just have to think about how old my kids were. Over 20 years ago when we started the Alliance. So we've been around a long time, and that means I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you at our conferences or other events. Welcome to the Leaders Learning Network today. As you know, after-school professionals and volunteers are creative and resourceful. This fall, the Wyoming After School Alliance is inviting dynamic youth professionals to a series of conversations that will introduce evidence-based practices through concrete examples and action, showcase innovation and ideas happening in Wyoming, and cultivate connections among peers across the state. I'm super excited that I get to join you today because my own district superintendent, Dr. Margaret Crespo, is here. We have Carisa Barnett from Teton County, and Kate will be giving you more information about both of these dynamic leaders. And building community partnerships is such a large goal of Laramie County School District 1, and also my own school, as we use that to reach out to the after school program in my school and to our families, and to help all kids grow and learn and really leverage those partnerships to make them better human beings and better adults. So thanks for joining us today.
So I have the honor of introducing both of our speakers. We'll introduce both folks and then get started with the presentations immediately following. Dr. Margaret Crespo is superintendent of Laramie County School District 1 in Wyoming. And prior to Laramie County, she was area superintendent for Boulder Valley School District in Colorado. She also spent time as Boulder Valley's assistant superintendent for secondary school leadership and spent time in Greeley and Loveland. With more than 25 years of educational and leadership experience in New Jersey, Arizona, Colorado, and now Wyoming, Crespo has been a teacher, counselor, assistant principal, and principal at the secondary level. Many hats, as I'm sure many of you all have experienced that as well. And then we're also pleased to welcome Carisa Barnett from the Teton Literacy Center. She is the director of operations there. It's a community-based organization in Jackson, and her role focuses on building partnerships and programming within the Teton County School District 1 and other community organizations, ensuring extended student and family support and resource access. Previously, Carisa has worked extensively with the federal TRIO programs, as well as serving as a college admissions counselor, both of which put her in a position to serve as a liaison and build connections between students, families, school districts, and institutions of higher education. So we're so pleased to have both of you here, and we'll start with Dr. Crespo, please.
Hi, everyone. What an absolute pleasure to be here today. Super excited that I was even asked to participate. I hope that the information that I provide is helpful. Certainly any questions or anything that I can do to help this process. So a little bit about my about my background, as was mentioned. I've been in a lot of states, both very urban and rural settings, and just have recognized the ultimate importance around making sure that our students across our communities have something to do after school. And after school doesn't always mean 3 to 5. I mean, there are a lot of other opportunities outside of those hours that include weekends and evenings and ways to collaborate and connect so that parent, community, and schools can kind of all come together. And I'll just use some quick examples. You know, Craig mentioned we have a strategic plan that we initiated starting last year in April. It launched officially. We were very clear around making sure that it was for student readiness, and student readiness not just being academic, followed by our healthy environments, which included things like making sure that our school environments are places where our communities can partner with us and our students feel connected and have healthy experiences. And a lot of that is knowing that you need your after school programming and your community to come together to help support with that so that it aligns to the values and systems of your community. And then the last piece was for us was community partnerships, which is the anchor to the work that we're doing. So when we think about being collaborative and cooperative across systems. As an example, in my leadership team, once a week we do a learning session, and once a week is kind of a nuts and bolts. And our most recent learning session was at our local Boys and Girls Club, just connecting with them, touring the facility so that we can speak knowledgeably about what programs are out there and what systems are out there. We've had conversations and we'll be moving forward with training our after school partners so that our tutors and our adult supports can be there. So that our supports can be there to come alongside with us. So an example would be if we have a reading program, or we're doing community-wide right now, a social emotional program called Sources of Strength. We were provided a grant opportunity through the state, and we've trained 250 volunteers. Community partners have come alongside so that the same vocabulary is impacting our kids across the system and across our whole community, so that even our students, when they're talking to adults in their community, coaches or after school support or parents, that common vocabulary exists for the safety net for all of our students. It would be really exciting if our kids were leaving school at the end of the day, and if they needed homework support or if they needed enrichment, they're getting the same language and the same understanding so that they have safe places to go, safe places to connect. We also are providing professional development in a variety of areas and hope that actually some of our partners can do that work for us. The other thing that I'd like to just share is community-wide, we're building transitions so that as a PK parent or a PK provider, you can know what's expected of the students that as they're going to kindergarten. Then that happens again in 3rd grade, and then 6th grade, 8th grade, high school, so that our partners recognize, like, what does my kindergartner need to know as a parent? How can our providers use that support throughout our system? As an example, one of our providers or after school partners has a system where our students get career and technical education credit for their work in their after school programming. So they go to the after school programming, they then go to the community college through that partnership, and whatever they earn translates to high school credit. In a previous experience where I was, we did that with our Explorers program and our hospital volunteers. They also received credit. So then the importance of having those partnerships becomes so much more valuable in that interconnectedness. So I think I took about 7 minutes. I tend to talk fast. It's the Jersey. So I hope that what I shared was important, and frankly, our commitment, and hopefully we'll just continue to expand that.
Thank you. No, that was wonderful. It gives us a lot to think about. So Carisa, we'd love to hear from you next.
Yeah, and I think it's so great to hear from the school district perspective, kind of your goals with the partnership, because I would say on the flip side of that, as a community-based organization, we very much also are striving towards all of those things. And I think when we think partnerships, we just truly could not exist without partnerships at the level we do and sustain the programming we do. At Teton Literacy Center, we last year served about 500 students and 400 families with 12 staff members. So like all of us in education, just tight and scrambling. And I think all of us are finding post-COVID, just these needs that we saw arise during COVID are still here with us, and they're expanding. And so as we try to provide these wraparound services for students and families, we really cannot do it alone. We just don't have the time. So we've really been thinking outside of the box on how do we bring in more partnerships, folks who can help us expand capacity, folks who can help us go deeper with each student instead of providing superficial services, and folks who have expertise. I mean, we know literacy, but physics, absolutely not. So who can be providing that for our students? And within those partnerships, absolutely our local school district, Teton County School District, is one of our key partners, and they have been since the beginning. And I think we as an institution, we are not our own educational institution. We are serving students who are in another institution. So the more that we can overlap, and as Margaret was saying, have that shared vocabulary, pieces like that, that is absolutely our goal. And I think our partnership with the district is on many different levels: teachers, paras, custodians that we work with every day, principals, district administrators, the superintendent. We're pretty involved with all of those parties to make it work. And I think we share data, we are sharing PD, we are getting a lot of PD from our district, as well as engaging in PD opportunities alongside them. We are working really closely with teachers who trust us and will refer students to us. And I think that works in the opposite way also, where we have really close connections with these families and kind of say, you know, this is what's going on, these are our concerns, and have the school district respond on their end to provide that wraparound support. So our partnership with the district is definitely instrumental. I think one really exciting new development we've had in this partnership over the last year, you know, we provide after school programming and had really gotten to the point where we were seeing a bigger need within the district, and just we did not have the capacity to provide that support. Also, like many others, we're seeing a big rise in behaviors and whatnot after COVID. So trying to manage that while adding students was proving very challenging for our staff. So we sat down with the school district, with another community-based organization that we contract to run programs for us, and kind of came together and reimagined our after-school clubs. So now it is not just our staff running those. We have 2 community-based organizations, but we also have paras and teachers from the district who are either running their own club or they are supporting a community-based organization staff member in running an after-school class. Our capacity with this, we have expanded by over 100 students, probably about 75 families. And we have, I would say, roughly 60 to 70 of those kiddos are coming 2 days per week, which we used to have maybe 2 to 3 kids that we could serve 2 days per week. So we've really upped our capacity. And I will not lie, it was real bumpy last spring. I think my whole staff may have wanted to oust me. But we really took all of those bumps, we took everyone's feedback, and we brought everyone to the table this fall and just had some really productive pre-meetings. And now I go into programs and it is the most beautiful thing to watch these teaching teams from different organizations working together day after day. And the commitment, we just said, okay, we did this for the fall, who wants to do it? And everyone is committed for the rest of the school year with a lot of excitement at this point. So that's a newer partnership for us, a newer leg of our school district partnership that has been really exciting, and I think is already just adding a lot of depth that is very beneficial for mostly the students, but also both organizations. So that will be my 2 cents.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. We have definitely a lot to think about. I don't know, Craig and Steve, I was kind of curious from both of your perspectives. Steve is also on the Wyoming After School Alliance Advisory Committee. And Craig is school-based and Steve is outside of the school district. So I was wondering if you both might want to take a moment to think about what works in your communities. And what advice you might have for school districts, after school programs, and other organizations looking for partnerships.
Yeah, so we partner with the Ask program in Cheyenne, and they're in several of our schools in the district and have been for several years. I think what works well for us is trying to remember that at 3:35 when the bell rings, that they don't quit being Afterschool students. that they're still our students and they're not just going to a different program. And it really helps us not have an us versus them attitude, but a partnership, that they are providing a service at AFLRBA to help keep our kids safe, providing some STEM activities, providing some things that we don't always have time to get to during the school day. And we keep that line of communication open so that we know what rooms they need to use. We can make sure the gym is open when they need that, see if there's anything else that we can provide for them to make sure that the program runs smoothly and our kids get the benefit of all of that. The other thing that works really well for us is our coordinator for our building is actually a staff member in my building. So there's that seamless transition for Mr. Wadel to go from paraprofessional to leader of the after school program. And he can communicate with me very easily throughout the day if there are any issues. And then of course, we try to work together on students that may or may not have some difficult behaviors so that we can share with the program about what works for us during the school day. But we also get great information about what works for them. And we can partner with them together to make sure our kids are successful during the school day and at the ASK program.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I have a whole lot more enlightening things to add. I think as you were talking, a real trick for us has been to identify the people within the district that are responsible for the different aspects of what we're doing. So for example, we're doing a lot of data requests and analysis right now as part of our grant requirements. And you know, that's a very specific person in the district who has the same level of understanding of the data we're looking for and the analysis we need to do, the reporting we're trying to figure out, and translating that to people like school board members or teachers. We've found those people that really help us speak that language and know exactly what we're trying to do. But it's not someone that we would have identified if we didn't have that type of partnership. And I could keep going with different examples of that where, you know, building the relationship with somebody in fiscal is way different than what we would do with just our conversations with the superintendent or principals. So that's part of the key, and really what we spent a lot of time just trying to learn and identify so that we can go straight to those people and work with them directly.
And Ray, thank you for being here from the Prevention Alliance. You bring kind of a different organizational, not exclusively after school, but important after school.
Sure.
And your organization is kind of, it seems like you're reinvigorating some of your work, and it's really focused on building partnerships. I was wondering if you could share some lessons learned about your organization.
Sure. So I'm Rhea Parsons. I'm with the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, and I facilitate a statewide council called the Wyoming Prevention Action Alliance. We connect statewide partners and community prevention coalitions to sort of fill the gaps on a statewide level as it relates to substance abuse prevention and mental health promotion. As you probably all know, every county, with the exception of Platte County currently, has a substance abuse prevention coalition in their community that has a team of people that come together to determine evidence-based strategies and environmental strategies. Most of the work that we do is not direct service as after school programs are. Ours is much more environmental. But we like to support and do what we can to encourage those direct services as well as the environmental programs. So we have been in the middle of restructuring a little bit this last year to make us a little more effective in the work that we're doing, and had our first meeting under that new structure here in October. But ultimately, at the end of the day, is what we would like to do is to connect those resources, be a statewide resource as it relates to substance abuse prevention and mental health, and support organizations such as the Afterschool Alliance and what you have going on here in keeping Wyoming communities healthy and moving forward in a positive direction. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to open it up to questions from the group to each other. And if you have ideas or suggestions for each other's work, we're hoping that the Leaders Learning Network is really an interactive organization of, within the After School Alliance to help folks support each other. You have any
I
questions?
think a question I might have from the perspective of a superintendent is,
Great.
how do we like bring that together in a way that is comprehensive outside of, like, I know the Alliance is working in a very specific way, and I think about bringing in partners to our community at the table, like kind of at the same table. What's the best perhaps way to do that statewide? Because I mean, I know we have something in our county and Cheyenne, but just so that we can brainstorm like this, school districts, community people in a more comprehensive way. And this may be it. I'm just wondering about ways to invite some of our own community partners.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, we're definitely, this is the second in a series of 3 conversations we're having this fall. The Alliance has also had a number of community conversations in Rollins and Laramie and a couple of the other places, Casper, where we are trying to bring people together. But I'd love to hear from others if you all have suggestions on what is effective. I mean, Rhea, I know you do a statewide organization, but with Craig and Steve and Emily and Susan, love to hear your feedback on these ideas as well.
I have a quick question, actually. Sorry, Craig, were you going to talk? You can go if.
Yeah, I was just going to answer, just give some background about some things that we used to do, if that's okay. Pre-COVID, the Alliance used to have some things like we had a juvenile justice, not a conference, but kind of a symposium once a year where we brought together lots of different folks from prevention coalitions, sheriff's departments, anyone that could really be, and it was based on preventative resources, right? It wasn't something that was punitive. We were trying to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system. So we had things like that. We also had other meetings where we were kind of conveners for groups to try and facilitate conversations and get that kind of statewide sharing of resources going. So I think that's something we could definitely take back to the advisory board and just visit about if that's something that would fit into our plan and things as well. So I think that's a good thought as we think back to pre-COVID times.
And I think just to echo Craig's, and then I'll be quick, Rhea, because I know you had a question. We have been focusing kind of region by region, but haven't thought about a statewide convening. So I think that's a really interesting question, Dr. Crespo, to think about what could it look like as a united state force, and then have our regional action groups, but committed to developing that shared language would be really powerful. And so I think that's a great question that would be helpful to continue to chew on as we're figuring out what resources we can provide to best support the needs of the communities.
So my question is, because I'm kind of late to the game on this, is the ultimate goal here to connect school districts and community resources? Is that what I'm hearing, or is it deeper than that? Or I'm just wondering if you could share with me a little more on the ultimate goal.
Yeah, well, because of the COVID funding, there are a lot of new resources and encouragement from the federal government, the state government, to build more partnerships between after school and school districts. And Craig, I know Craig and Steve are very familiar with how that all works. If you have feedback on that as well for more clarity.
Well, and I think a goal of the After School Alliance has always been to build partnerships in community to provide services for kids, right? To get kids into safe environments between those times from 3 to 6 o'clock is usually, the biggest times. And so it's not always about school districts and programmers. We always want school districts to be partners because they have facilities and they have kids. But it can be anyone from our CCLC grantees. We will partner with anyone that has an interest in kids to help provide programming. So it really is, it's just a real broad, how do we bring together coalitions to provide those services?
So I think, Craig, you bring up a really good point around super unique opportunity to come together. There's a ton of, as we all know, a ton of federal funding right now, specifically around that kind of life skill, social, emotional rebound from the pandemic conversation and funding. And I think about a state like Wyoming that we have really incredible partners that regionalized, coming together to say, how are we meeting students before school, during school, after school? Like, what are the online opportunities that are out there? That process, like the catch up and keep up. And I think, people talk a lot about learning loss, and the reality is you can't have loss for something you never had. So, and for many of us, our kids stayed in school the whole year, the whole pandemic. So how do we keep that momentum going? Through those funding opportunities that may be out there based on kids' interest, so that it's not just like, I have to go to this after program because whatever XYZ reason, but there's like a conjunction of, I'm interested in law enforcement or fire or career in tech ed or to be a teacher, and statewide, like, here are the options that we have, because we can duplicate those pretty easily.
Well said. And some of this discussion is based off the School Superintendents Association. Let's see, let me pop it here into the chat. There we go. It is, Michelle was looking at this and it really spurred her imagination to think about how we could bring this conversation to this table about the power of partnerships. So this is a really excellent webpage about how the School Superintendents Association is kind of encouraging and looking at the power of partnerships as well. So it's a good resource.
So I'll talk a little bit about a different kind of partnership. I'm with the Wyoming Alliance for Environmental Education, and we do professional development, specifically around helping educators take kids outside, learn outside, engage in science and nature. And we have partnered with the Wyoming Afterschool Alliance on 2 different projects. The first was Science Action Club, which was for middle school students. And we trained after-school providers in how to use this curriculum, which taught kids how to be citizen scientists and go outside and collect data and learn about their local environment. So that partnership involved the After-School Alliance doing all of the promotion through their mailing list and their contacts, and helping find locations for workshops. And then I did all the training that we did with a number of different places around the state. And then the second project that kind of extended off of that was a different one called Leap into Science, which comes out of the Franklin Institute. And it's a curriculum for little kids and families. And so we partnered with the After-School Alliance, but also the state library, because Leap into Science is a science and literacy combined program. And again, the After-School Alliance provided a lot of the logistics and administrative types of tasks and sent the information out on their mailing list. State library contacted librarians, because this is a program that can be done in libraries and museums, as well as in after school or classrooms or preschool. And then a representative from the library and I did the actual trainings, and she focused on the literacy part and I focused on the science pedagogy and teaching strategies. We just wrapped that. Well, I take that back. We're almost wrapping that one up. We have one more workshop to do, possibly 2. But it's been a good partnership because it took our experience with professional development, specifically around hands-on science and taking kids outside, with the After-School Alliance connections across the state. And so we were able to reach a lot of people through those workshops. We trained over, well, now it's over 80 preschool and after school educators, and librarians and museum educators. So it was using their reach and our professional development training expertise that made that partnership really successful. And it was a great partnership with the state library, because that was completely different than anything we've done before, but bringing in their literacy expertise was great.
That's a great example. And Susan, I'd love to hear more about your alliance as well, because you rely on partnerships within your own organization to bring different voices to the table and expertise into the room as well.
Yeah, we're still building. But yeah, as an alliance, we try to partner with organizations. Sometimes we can provide small amounts of funding. We just are wrapping up a grant from EPA that helped us provide small grants to organizations around the state to do community environmental education. So we had funding with Energy Conservation Works in Teton County to do energy conservation programs with high school students, and Audubon Rockies to do their Master Naturalist program, training adults. And then the third grantee was on the Wind River Reservation for a project to teach people on the reservation of all ages about traditional uses of plants while simultaneously removing exotic and invasive species along the Wind River and replacing them with native species. So in that partnership, we didn't just give them money, we took them through a training on how do you develop programs for a community, whether it's adults or kids, but going in and working with partners in the community. So the grantees had partnerships, for example, Energy Conservation Works had partnerships with the school district, and Audubon has partnerships with other organizations that help with the training, like Game and Fish and U.S. Forest Service. So they have their partners, and we helped them build those partnerships through a training process. So we've been trying to build, we're still small, but we're trying to build networks across the state that reach out and provide training for direct to educators, but also training for organizations who then turn around and work with educators.
Excellent, thank you. So, I mean, it all seems so obvious that partnering is such a great idea, right? But Carisa, maybe you talked a little bit about your growing pains. I was wondering if you might be able to expand on that a little bit, on how obviously there's challenges with bringing in new partners, whether it's with them or with your staff, or if you have any potential lessons learned that would help all of us.
Yeah, we certainly did experience some growing pains, and I think all three organizations did. And I think our first big mistake that was made is these conversations happened at an administrative level initially, and then kind of this partnership had already been agreed upon before it was brought to those who are going to be on the ground day to day, which obviously was some more buy-in should have happened earlier on in the process, because it was very painful the way that unrolled. And then with any new program, I think we had a strong model of what we were doing. We were not reinventing the wheel, but we were bringing folks together who had never worked together before, who both worked with the same students in different settings, and saw, a student at 4 o'clock in the afternoon versus 9 o'clock in the morning in a structured classroom is a very different student. And by that time they are tired and any behaviors that they might have been keeping in check all day are now pretty exacerbated. So some challenges, teaching teams had real challenges around how to handle and approach behaviors together. And I think some other kind of just bumps we didn't expect, you know, our teachers have been so used to for so long, even though we're in the schools, at the end of the day, we are our own principal. We handle all our own situations, injuries, pieces like that, because, you know, at 4:30, 5 o'clock, there's not a nurse in the building. So we need to be able to handle those. And so coming together with district staff, we had some real challenges around just how situations were handled. And then all of a sudden, you know, our staff is being rolled over by a teacher from the district that wasn't expected, and just bumps like that. And I think anything new is hard for people. And that was one of the biggest pushbacks from our team, is just, this is not how we do things. And I think a lot of patience and a lot of listening and just taking it all in really helped. And then responding to concerns. And I think really what has made a huge difference is bringing these folks from different organizations together before they are paired together in a classroom. And there is far more shared understanding on how we handle situations, conversations happening about students outside of that 2-hour setting when it's kind of hard to have that conversation. So I think we are at a much more solid place. But again, I grew some gray hairs, that's for sure. It was bumpy. But I do think, again, partnerships are just the lifeblood of TLC. And we've talked quite a bit about, I think, for us nonprofits, you know, our resources are limited, and the more that we can partner together to hit our shared populations, the more we can pool resources together. I just could not believe in it more, because they are limited and I don't have the energy to do it all. So if you're doing it over here, I'm going to send you all my kids. I'm going to support however I can, but we're just so big here on connecting and partnering. And I think it's exciting to hear, you know, some districts who are excited about this, because I can tell you, as a community-based organization, we have worked long and hard to build our relationship with the district. And just anytime the district wants to sit down and talk about some more ways for us to partner and support, it's really exciting for us, because it just really ups our value within the community and recognition of what we're doing, which then in turn makes our fundraising and pieces like that much easier when we can speak to all of this work we're doing with the district. So I really do think it's such a win-win. And I will add one more tidbit here while I have the floor. I think we're really diving in right now into this concept of parents as partners. I think so often we think of partners as organizations, but you know, we have 150 volunteers a year here at Teton Literacy. We could not run our programs without them, but also parents are obviously strapped, but there are a lot of parents who might have some time and who are really invested in their children. And so what support and programming and expertise do those parents have that we can be bringing in? So that's a new partner that we're really trying to dive deep into exploring this year. And we've already had some really fun results. We just had a family night with over 100 participants that was run by parents. They planned the activities, prepared everything, and our staff just hugged and high-fived and had a great time. My second 2 cents.
That's great. I don't know if Vivian, if you might want to come off mute. I know Lander Light's on. I think you all do some really great parent activities that engage the community with different activities in Lander here. I don't know if you might be available. But also, you know, it sounds like we're talking a lot about communication. So Dr. Crespo, I wonder, you mentioned how your one of your key assets was helping with communications and making sure those lines were clear with your partners.
Yeah, I think part of that, from my own experience in other communities, having that clear communication when Carisa was talking about like a teacher showing up and just kind of taking over, really setting up those systems so that people understand what that shared space is like, what those shared relationships are like, recognizing that there's a lot of expertise outside of the schoolhouse door, and how do we leverage those so that we're working together to the benefit of the students or kids if they're in after school. I know people don't like students end at 3 o'clock. So I would say that for us, it's about finding common language. One of the reasons that we started the Sources of Strength launch community-wide was because we hear all the time, like, our teachers in-house are tired and we have community partners that want to help. And how do we give the tools and resources that we're using out to the community so that there is that common thread throughout all of the work that we do? And we trained our school resource officers, we trained our mayor, city council, mental health providers, after school liaison, individual, like anyone who is willing to come into the training, our board members. And that helps, one, model for students the idea that we're here to help and support, and that it's okay to seek assistance. And it also helps cut through a lot of the negotiating of language with providers, after school resources, and the school district, so that you can deal with whatever the issue is at hand instead of having to navigate the language and all of that first.
Other questions or comments from the group about experiences or ideas? Okay, well, hearing none, I'm surprised. You're all generally a loquacious group, but
the only thing I'll add is that our group has been very supportive of Sources of Strength and would love to get that going across all districts. And we have been working to support that. There's several of our members that have been actively on the ground promoting Sources of Strength. And so anybody that's on this call that would like additional support or anything to get that going in other places, we would love to figure out how to help make that happen. So just as a quick side note.
thank you.
And Kate, I'm seeing a note from Vivian in the chat that they've been joining their school district to do some huge family nights as community. So, and I know because you live in that community, you may have some perspective on it if you'd like to at least speak to what you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, Vivian, please fill in the blanks, but everybody, Lights On is an incredible program that families and teachers and all kinds of community organizations value. And I think part of that is through their ability to kind of reach out and build partnerships. So just kind of looking through the amazing list that Vivian shared of technology booths, book tables, eagle whistle tribal reading for families. They work with Head Start and STEM. So they're very busy and have some amazing partnerships within the community. But yeah, maybe we can kind of start to wrap up. I do have 2 quick things to share. Thanks, Vivian, about 2 events that are, well, 1 initiative and 1 event. So speaking of, wanting to hear from our providers, our, people that work with kids, people that work with after school providers, let me just pop up this slide really quick. Let's see. Just a moment here. So we have the Power of Us workforce survey, and it is a, let me find my notes so I get my language right. It is a first of its kind effort that seeks to know and understand more about youth workers. And we want to hear, of course, from our traditional after-school program providers, but we're also hoping to engage staff, volunteers working with mentoring, folks working in sports, museums, youth employment opportunities, outdoor programs. So that might, you might want to think about scouts, 4-H, high school sports, middle school sports, libraries, and parks and rec programs. So we would encourage you to go to the powerofussurvey.org and complete that. We have set a goal of 250 respondents for Wyoming. This is a nationwide survey, but if we get 250, we'll have access to state level data about the youth serving workforce that we can use to inform policy, practice, and to further research and better support the workforce. With the ultimate goal of improving job quality in the field in Wyoming. So if you know folks in your life, in your work, in your community, please do share this survey. And we also have Open Minds, Open Spaces coming up. And if you complete this survey and you send me a copy, like a screenshot of your completion of the survey, we'll give you $15 off registration. And so here's a little bit of information about the Open Minds, Open Spaces. It'll be next Thursday and Friday, starting at 11 a.m. And it's a virtual conference that first started because of COVID, but we've really found that it's an amazing way to bring nationally known speakers to our states and our communities. We're really excited to have a keynote speaker, Dr. Bianca Baldridge from Harvard, who will talk about how after-school programs can do their best work by celebrating staff and focusing on their communities. We'll have Scott Mann from Venture Lab, who will be talking about youth entrepreneurship. Jamal Williams from PAIR will be talking about their social emotional framework and also links their framework links to STEM learning. And also we'll have Julia Rogers Bascom from the National Youth Leadership Council, who will talk about youth voice. And that's just a few of the speakers. So we would love it if you might want to attend. You can find the full agenda at that the website there, and also it'll take you to openmindopen-spaces.org, so you can see the entire agenda. So that's super great. And again, you can get $15 off registration if you do the Power of Us survey. So we would.
And I have dropped both links in the chat. If you can't link directly, or if you can't directly click on the page, and we'll make sure that these links also get out to the group after we wrap up today.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, do we have any closing thoughts for the group? Maybe Craig, I'll put you on the spot again, or Dr. Crespo, would love to hear.
I just want to say thank you. I think it's always fantastic when we can learn about other things that are happening and just kind of network. So I do really appreciate the privilege and honor of being able to talk to all of you today.
Thank you.
I just want to briefly appreciate all the amazing partnerships that are happening. And I think, Carrie, your role in pulling these pieces together to help us elevate and celebrate partnerships across the state so that we can know more about what's happening in different places is going to be such a critical and lovely piece to helping others or offering examples to other communities that are just starting the work. So thank you all.
And I would just say, from an Alliance perspective, I'm really thrilled I got to join all of you today. I'm sad that Michelle couldn't be here, but I'm also glad her flight was delayed because that meant I got to. I don't get to join very often, but I always know of the fantastic work that the Alliance is doing and the fantastic work that all of you are doing for kids out in your specific communities. So thank you for doing that.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll send a wrap-up email to all of you who attended, and would encourage you to continue conversations over email or with us. We've definitely gathered some great ideas today, so we'll look forward to implementing some of those and reaching out to you for further conversations about building partnerships.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. We really, really appreciate your time.
Bye.
Have a great day.